What did we learn from the Maple Leafs locker cleanout day? We'll discuss that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, the daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host Dave Morassutti. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go, now free on Google Play or on the App Store. Game on. Welcome back into the show, everyone. Today was locker cleanout day for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We heard from head coach Sheldon Keefe. We heard from Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Morgan Rielly, John Tavares, William Nylander. We even heard from Ilya Samsonov today. So although, for whatever reason, Brad Treliving refuses to admit that there is a core or a core 4 plus 5, I guess, with Rielly, those are the guys who spoke today. So it just goes to show.
Well, it was the main people that spoke today. Bertuzzi and Domi also spoke in the background. It was a very weird setup. The Leafs did two scrums.
Yeah, there were more. Yes, there was just
the main scrum, the one that all the cameras were on the core 4.
That's right. That's right. And they spoke today, and yes, both Domi and Bertuzzi also spoke, and did say that they'd like to return to Toronto, and there would be some mutual interest there if a contract extensions do get discussed at some point over the next few weeks. So that's at least good to hear, considering I think we enjoyed the way that both of those guys flourished into their roles as the season progressed. So we'll touch on some of the more polarizing comments that were made by the group today. Some things that we learned, what we pulled out of everyone speaking. But I want to start first with a tweet that came out about mid-afternoon from Maple Leafs PR. Basically, they came out and said that the Leafs, they announced a change in when management was supposed to speak. Originally, the plan was for them to speak on Thursday, and there was no names involved with the original post of when they were going to talk. Just said management to speak on Thursday, players on Monday, along with Sheldon Keefe. And then later on, we got a notification, change of plans. It's going to be on Friday, and it will be with Keith Pelley, Brendan Shanahan, and Brad Treliving. Like, what does that tell you, Dave? Because to me, that kind of feels like they're going to be running it back with the same guys at the head of the snake, at least when it comes to Brendan Shanahan continuing on as president of the team.
I wouldn't want to give it definitive, but it sounds more likely than not. That's how I would read it. Because, if you're planning on making a change, A, how long are you going to wait before you make a change? And B, if you were going to make a change or there was any inkling that a change is going to happen, why would you let the guys speak, right? Right. I remember last year, Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas usually did their end of seasons together. Then Dubas is like, I want to talk. Shanahan's like, well, I'm not ready to talk. Dubas like, I'm going to go anyways. That's kind of where things kind of went a little awry there. So to me, the fact that they changed it, not surprising. Obviously, this probably had to do with some scheduling with when Keith Pelley was available. The fact that Keith Pelley is going to be there, that's also very interesting because I don't, for the life of me, remember the last time a president of the boss of the president was in a press conference.
Yeah, like the MLSE's president, right? The head honcho. And I mean, Tim Leiweke was that guy for many years. And, then he stepped down and no one really assumed that role. So it's been, somewhat vacant for a little bit, right? It was just like the
There's been
board.
guys there, but no one with the front facing of like that Tim like Wiki had. Like no one
Exactly.
that
Yeah, right. So it's been the Shanny show essentially
yeah.
for the last few seasons, and people felt like maybe this team got too complacent, and that was a big reason why Keith Pelley came in. And the thought process is, would he hold guys accountable? And if they bring Brendan Shanahan back, I don't know. That is an interesting situation for Keith Pelley. Potentially, he's sitting here and he's trying to. He's just trying to give himself a year to figure things out since he is very new to the organization. He wants to see how things, work out for a season. But I mean, I don't know. I think it would be a bolder move to kind of start from scratch and, if you're Keith Pelley. But to me, it does feel as though Brendan Shanahan is going to return based on the fact that he will be in attendance at this press conference on Friday. Because if they plan to move on from him, it probably would have happened around Wednesday or Thursday, and then Pelley would address it on Friday, and Shanahan would not be there. Similarly to the way that Kyle Dubas was let go prior to Shanahan speaking, and he was not there to speak on it either. It was just Shanahan who was talking. So, to me, the fact that all three guys are going to be sitting there chatting on Friday leads me to believe that Brendan Shanahan is here to stay.
Yeah. It would be wrong to say that they're just things can happen after the fact. It would be look so weird on the team if they allowed Shanahan to go out there, say a bunch of things, act as if he was still in charge, and then be like, "Yeah, no, we're pulling shoot." Like that would be
right.
It would also look very not even disorganized. I wouldn't even say amateurish, but it would just be a bad look in terms of just the optics that it presents to your fans. That
Well,
you
so
would
let me ask you this then, Dave. Does that same thought process count with the coach? Because he was trotted out there today, and we'll get into what he had to say. But he was trotted out there today to speak to the media. Like, does the same thought process work there, or do you think that it's a different situation?
no, because the fact is, it would be one thing if like we think about last year when Treliving came out, and he didn't have a definitive answer on Keefe. That just spoke to me that he wasn't ready to make that change. The fact that Keefe went up, I think they're just saying he's gonna go up, and you felt the tone and how he's speaking, that even himself didn't have any certainty about his status. And I think the fact that they're moving this later gives them that time that they need to make that answer. And either it's going to come out before the press conference or right at that press conference. I just think that letting Keith speak, in my opinion, doesn't change that for me. The Shanahan one does, just because we haven't heard from him. This is usually when you hear from him, and it's a normal thing. You're just adding Keith Pelley to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think that you definitely had to hear from the coach. You had to hear what he had to say, regardless if you're going to let him go. I mean, we saw this happen with the Raptors. He was out there doing the exit interviews the year that they let him go, and 2 days later, he was fired. And then, not too long after that, the DeMar DeRozan trade was made to bring in Kawhi Leonard, and Dwayne Casey went on to win Coach of the Year as an unemployed coach in the NBA, which was interesting. So could see a similar situation here where over the next couple of days rumblings start to come out that the team's looking to go in a different direction at the head coaching role. I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to 32 Thoughts today, but it sounds as though a lot of the insiders are thinking that it might be time for change at the coaching position as well. Usually they don't come out with saying stuff like that unless they have an inkling that change could be coming. And Elliot Friedman even went as far to nominate like a front runner for the job, supposedly in Craig Berube. So, I wonder if the reason why they made the change from Thursday to Friday was to make sure that they left themselves with enough time to make that move, right? To let go of Sheldon Keefe, but then also bring in Craig Berube and make sure that he's up to speed and maybe ready to be there for Friday as well. And that announcement could come, at that press conference. And maybe they felt that Thursday would have been a little too soon to make all of it happen and buy themselves a little bit more time. I don't know. Do you think there's any validity to that thought process?
Well, it wasn't even that. It's the fact that Ottawa, who was rumored to have Berube high on their list, up and decided they're going to go with Travis Green
Right.
instead.
So
And
why is that?
Like,
Is
if
that
you're Craig
Berube?
Berube, you got a team that has a definitive opening right now, willing to get you back to coaching. Leads me to believe there's another opening that you're maybe waiting out for. Maybe Biz Nasty is right. If you didn't hear Biz on the TNT, Berube chirped him. He's like, "Careful, Chief. Otherwise, I'm gonna start the rumblings of your next coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs." No reaction from Berube when that happened. But
Yeah. Was that was a while ago though, right? That wasn't
no, that was
recent.
literally on Monday. Or sorry, Sunday.
Oh, was that Sunday? Okay, I thought I had read because I saw the clip. I didn't actually see it live, but I saw the clip, and I almost thought that someone said, "Oh, this is from months ago." But that was actually Sunday.
I'm pretty sure that one was Sunday.
That's
it could
funny.
maybe it was a little, maybe it was past, but I'm pretty sure that was on Sunday.
Either way, there might be some validity to Craig Berube potentially being the next coach of the Maple Leafs. We'll have time to get into that and talk about that later on in the week. But I do want to get into what was said by Coach Sheldon Keefe today, kind of what we pulled away from that. Some polarizing comment from Mitch Marner. We'll play the audio of that one so you guys can hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And then we'll try and decipher what else was said today and what meaning there was to what we heard from the players on Locker Cleanout Day. So all of that coming up on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff to get into in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you can unlock. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis to taunt your friends, and also plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on the Google Play or on the App Store. Game on. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you. We're reacting to Maple Leafs Locker Cleanout Day. And just a reminder that just because the season's over, the Locked On Leafs podcast remains a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. So season's over, but we continue to bring you all the content all the way through the playoffs and even through the summer. So don't think that we're going to be going away. Keep in touch with what's going on here with the Maple Leafs on a daily basis with us here at Locked On Leafs. And we'll continue with Locker Cleanout Day and our reactions from it. As we said, all the big boys spoke, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, and such. I heard from a couple other guys, Sheldon Keefe, obviously, and we'll hear from Keith Pelley, Brendan Shanahan, and Brad Treliving on Friday now, which we will discuss a little bit more later in the week. But overall, before we dive into what each person said, did you have any overall thoughts on kind of what was talked about today from the Maple Leafs? Any themes or anything that you kind of pulled away from today?
I mean, it was very short. We were covering all of it for Sportsnet today, and we were just like, that's it. Like, there are a lot of them that just flew by. It was like a car wash. So the Leafs,
3 minutes and 2 seconds for Mitch Marner.
That was that. The Leafs are also control. Like, the Leafs control a lot of that. They're like like they were calculated in how long guys were going to be allowed to talk, and they know that certain questions would come up. And again, as I said, they split in 2 different scrums. If you really want to talk to someone, you had to go in one scrum. You had to kind of choose a little bit. So it made things a little bit weird in that regard. But for me, the players were underwhelming for the most part. I think Morgan Rielly was the most illuminating one out of all the other ones. Kind of the same, like kind of mirroring what was said after Game 7. The whole "we're close," like we're right there. That's like constantly saying that has really angered this fan. And I didn't think Leafs fans could get more angry until they kept hearing the core guys saying that the team was right there.
Every time though, it's like clockwork. You lose on a Game
Yeah.
7, we're close. We're right there. We're knocking on the door. Knocking on the door to what? Round 2? Big whoop. Like, big whoop. You have not been close to anything of significance. But anyways, that's not what we need to get into today.
No.
But yeah, that was said a couple of times throughout the day as well. I completely agree. Anything else that kind of stuck out to you?
I mean, Matthews, I felt like that would just give him a chance to. I know he's very private in things that have happened to him, whether the COVID incident that we remember from a few years ago and injuries. He's not very open to it unless the Leafs announce something.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he didn't really give anything concrete about what happened to him, like he said he got sick,
Yeah.
but then he mentions a hit, and we don't know what the hit did. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think a hit helps like hurt the illness. You were already ill, man. Like it just left more questions than answers. He had a chance to really come out and just put it to bed, and he didn't. That was really weird, in my opinion.
Yeah, it like makes you wonder like how serious of an injury was it that you're not willing to say anything? Like, are you worried that people will know what's going on? Like, yeah, it is kind of bizarre. And that's something that honestly all series long the Maple Leafs with the way that they handled the media, not answering any questions, especially injury related. You know, they let Leafs Nation and the press kind of let their minds run wild, and that's an often dangerous place. That's a dangerous thing to happen. So the Leafs' lack of transparency created a lot of a lot of stir, I would say, throughout the last couple of weeks, and a lot of that's on their own doing, and some of it continued into today, and what we heard from the players. When I talk about overarching themes from today, it seemed like everyone came to the defense of Mitch Marner and kind of was accusing the media of building a narrative as Marner being the scapegoat this season, and how, in years past, it's been a goalie, or it's been Babcock, or it's been Justin
Kadri,
Hall, or Kadri, Galchenyuk, Gardner. Like, there's always, a scapegoat. And this year they were saying, oh, of course, you're building Marner up to be that. But, there's a reason for it. Ultimately, there's always a reason for it, if you ask me. And what I thought was also interesting when you listen to kind of everybody speak today, it felt like to me only 2 guys actually took like any type of responsibility on themselves, and that was Sheldon Keefe and Ilya Samsonov. The only 2 guys who actually said, I need to be better. If I'm better, that we could have done better. Right? The only people to criticize themselves today was Keefe and Samsonov, which I thought was interesting. Because again, that's more the same that we hear every year. Lack of accountability and responsibility for the players in that room, and it permeated once again today, which is not something you want to hear when you get ousted in the first round for the 7th time in 8 years. So those were a couple of things that I think I really took out of today. So let's dive into some of the things that were said. Let's play some of the audio that we heard. Do we want to start with Sheldon Keefe? We can start with Sheldon Keefe maybe and play his opening remarks, and then maybe also play his answer to if he thinks he should return if the team can get it done. I thought those were a couple of interesting comments that he had made. So why don't we start with the opening remarks, and then we can comment on it and go from there.
Yeah, your opening statements were quite strong about not moving on and everything, your responsibility. to what level of expectation do you have that you will get a chance to see this through next season or have another kick at it?
So, I'm in the coaching business, and in the coaching business, you don't get to make decisions about your position. So for me, it's out of my control. My job is to find solutions and help direct and create a path for our team to continue to move forward, and that's my focus. I understand that ownership and management, they make those types of decisions. As I said, I accept responsibility for not meeting results. I believe in myself greatly. I love coaching the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now more than ever, I believe in myself and our team, and that I will win and our team will win. I've been through a lot, as a coach in my career, and to get to this level, and I've won a lot, before coming here. And the path always looks different, but you'll learn along the way. And I've learned a lot through my experience, and I know I'm in a good place. That decision's out of my control. My job is to continue to work to find solutions and continue to improve as a coach, and then at the same time, take accountability for the fact that we haven't met expectations, and decisions like you're alluding to are out of my control. But I certainly would like the attention and focus to be on me as the head coach or the leader, and you got to be accountable when you don't meet expectations.
So that was the first one where he's talking about his position. So here's the one about the expectations for those that
you know what? I don't even think we need to listen to the other one, because I think that was actually that was a really good clip, but I just kind of want to break it down before we the expectation ones. He just said there were sky high expectations. We didn't read.
Yeah, and he kind of he repeated a little bit in this one.
Yeah, put the responsibility on himself, and I like that. I do like that, and he realizes that someone has to take responsibility, and the fact that he's willing to fall on the sword for the team is definitely admirable. You have to say that. Came out here, and that was interesting. I will win, like calling his shot. I will win. This team will win. We will win. Talking about how he's learned a lot, which is very close to learning lessons. But what I will say this, the way that he was able to get the team to buy in and turn things around for games 5, 6, and 7 would give me confidence too, that when the team does what I tell them to do, when they execute the X's and O's that I have in place, this is a winning strategy and a winning formula. So I think that he's right by saying that he's learned lessons and he's learned a lot, and he feels confident, and he should, based on how things kind of turned out in those 3 games. The problem is it took so long to get there, and it's not just 5 games that it took to get there. It took 5 years and 5 games for this squad to get there, and that ultimately is the problem, and that could be the reason why Sheldon Keefe doesn't get another kick at the can to whatever he learned over the course of this series to try and apply it to next year. Might not get that opportunity. He could find himself out of a job in the next couple of days. But I do think, he deserves credit for taking responsibility. And, I'll come out and say this. I think this is probably the best coaching job that he's done since he's been here, right? There's been many times where we've sat here and said, Keefe is getting out-coached, right? He just continues to get out-coached. I thought he out-coached Montgomery in that series, especially later on with the adjustments he made, the in-game line changes that he was making, the very smart situational hockey that he was doing. Ultimately, the players failed to execute in overtime, and the season's over for it. It's unfortunate. But I do think that Sheldon Keefe coached a pretty good playoff series this year. And even the decision to put Noah Gregor in after game 5, knowing that we just need a little bit more speed, right? Just need a bit more speed here, taking Ryan Reeves out and putting in Gregor. And I thought that was, just a really good move, a smart move, a good play that he was able to do as the head coach. So I did like what I saw from Sheldon Keefe in this series, or later on in the series more specifically. But ultimately, again, just a microcosm of the series. It just took too long, right? It just took 5 years and 5 games to get that out of this group, and it's probably going to cost him a job.
See, in my opinion, you're right that it took too long. To me, it was way too late for them to finally buy in. I don't know if it was that they weren't buying in right away, but at the same time, what you saw in game 1, and they also like game 2, they played better. That's also because Austin Matthews played his best game I've ever seen him. Well, I say second best game I've seen him play in a playoff series. Last year against Tampa, when he helped them come back, that was the best one. But to me, there's 2 issues I had. You know how the Boston Bruins played you in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw the Bruins do to them in the regular season kind of played out the same in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Special teams, beat yourself up by making bad mistakes, right? And to me, that it's too late when you have to wait until game 5 to make adjustments, because that series, after you take a game on the road, you win game 2, you go back home, you have a chance to really put the pressure on Boston, and they let them off the hook. And to me, that's inexcusable. Now, I'm not putting it all on Sheldon Keefe. That's also the players.
Well, I Keefe ultimately took the blame and said, I didn't have the players ready, right, for those games that they lost earlier in the season. He didn't have them ready for it. But also, again, and I guess technically we'll never actually know, but for me, I think that it wasn't necessarily, he didn't wait till game 5 to make adjustments. I just think that the desperation kicked in game 5, and it took until then for the players to buy in, is what that's my belief. Again, we're all entitled to our own opinion, but I don't think after, the team was down 3-1, Keefe said, okay, we're going to start playing this way. Like, no, I think the goal was to play that way the whole time. If he had his choice, the whole time he would have had them playing that way, but they didn't execute. They didn't show a level of desperation until later in the series. And then they started to play that way and execute.
But who's the one has to get them to play with that desperation?
100%. And that's where Keefe says, ultimately, it is on me, right? Like,
right.
Ultimately, it is. And that's what he's saying. But, a coach is only as good as what the team makes him look. You know what I mean? Like, realistically,
I still can't forgive him for the way that power play ran, because you saw how stagnant. Yeah, they lacked desperation. So you know what?
Again, like there were changes made to the power play. Every game they had a different power play. Like, it's not like it was the exact same thing.
But it was the same players. It was the same personnel. It was the same 5 guys.
Here's why it wasn't, right? Game 1, 2, 3, William Nylander was not on the power play.
Yeah, but that's right? One play. But it's
Game 4, they had them all. Game 4, they had them all. Game 5 and 6, there was no Austin Matthews.
Okay,
right?
But that wasn't a coaching decision. That was an injury decision.
Oh, I get it, but it changes things.
But Morgan Rielly, why wasn't Jake McCabe given a chance to go on the power play? The only guy that
doesn't have a bomb of a shot either, though.
He scored. He was the only one that scored from the point in this playoff.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means you gotta try something different. That's the issue. Morgan Rielly, he wasn't doing anything on the power play. The Bruins said, you know what? Let Morgan Rielly stay on the power play. We're just going to go 4 deep into the zone. I don't want to get into the whole what the Bruins did, because that's gone. But it's a decision like that. You got to try something different. Try somebody else, because Morgan Rielly wasn't doing anything. Really, you're not hurting the power play by taking him off. And they had done it in the past. And to me, that's a coaching decision. That's not a player thing. You have to change something, otherwise they're gonna lose their confidence when things aren't going right. And the coach has to realize that and make those adjustments. And to me, that's where he failed, in my opinion. He failed to realize that he has to go and actually make those changes to tell the guys, it's not working. We need to do something totally different.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's completely fair. To blame the special teams on that. I'll give you that. Why don't we take one more break? Let's come back and maybe play Mitch Marner's quote, because he was probably the guy who was most damning today. So I want to hear and play what he had to say about being godlike figures in the city of Toronto Boy, did that ever get people buzzing online. So we'll play that audio straight from the horse's mouth on the other side. It's Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA, NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 on bets to bet on spreads, money line, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you. We're reacting to Locker Cleanout Day. And I would say Mitch Marner was obviously someone people wanted to hear from. He did not speak post-game after Saturday's loss, especially after being on the ice. And a lot of people pinpointing to him not picking up David Pastrnak coming through the zone as a big reason for why they had lost the game. Not the only reason, but part of the reason for why they lost the game and ultimately ended their season. And he had quite the presser. He didn't speak very long. Yeah, if you go and you watch on YouTube the full press conference for him, 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Very short, very sweet, but boy, was there one audio clip that is going to play and play and play all summer long. Why don't we play it? Here's Mitch Marner when asked if he'd like to stay with the team and what it means to be a Maple Leaf.
And that'd be a goal. I've expressed my love for this place, this city. Obviously, I've grown up here, so we'll start thinking about that now, and trying to figure something out.
What does it mean to be a Maple Leaf?
It means the world. Obviously, we're looked upon as kind of gods here, to be honest, and something that you really appreciate, and the love that you get here from this fan base and this attention is kind of none like any other. So you saw it with the Raps a couple years ago, the love that they still have for a lot of those players that they had to trade off this year. And that's kind of the love you want.
The Raptors won a championship, bitch. They won a championship.
Oh, man. I think, again, he took a pause before he said the word gods.
He knew that what was about to come out of his mouth was possibly some of the dumbest stuff that he's ever said. This man's literally said, we're looked upon as gods, basically, in this city.
Well, then you're like Hades, a very hated god, bitch. You ain't Zeus. You ain't. You could throw. You're not Hercules either. No one's.
His dog. His dog's name is Zeus.
That is true.
That's as close as he's getting to being referred to as a god right now. Like, just such a tone-deaf comment. Like, there's nobody in this city that people are pointing fingers at more for the way that this series went than at Mitch Marner. Like, he is the number, like, sure, what the guys are saying, Marner or Matthews and Nylander and, Tavares and Rielly and all them come to the defense of Mitch Marner and saying, like, oh, he's the media scapegoat right now. Like, yeah, of course we're talking about him, but there's a reason why. The guy had 3 points in this playoffs. The guy's paid $11 million, and he had 3 points in 7 games. 3 points, Dave. No wonder this guy is getting not picked on, but criticized by the media for his play. It was atrocious. And being on the ice, letting Pastrnak zip by him for the game-winning goal was really just the cherry on top to really, really give you an eye roll when you think about Mitch Marner and his status throughout the entire series.
He knew exactly what he needed to say when asked about long-term and wanting to be here. It's very easy for someone to say, yeah, I want to be here long-term. I like playing in Toronto. You know why, Mitch, you like playing in Toronto? Because this management group, this coaching staff has done everything possible to make your life easy.
Yeah.
They didn't really push him too hard on the contract talk. They made William Nylander sit down until December and really grilled him for a contract. Marner was allowed to not show up right away in training camp. to get that contract done. Not many people remember that one, right? Even with all the stuff that was being leaked, what his agent was telling reporters right after the Matthews contract, that first contract that he signed, like they have done everything to make Mitch Marner's life in Toronto easy. And I don't think he understands how grateful he should be to be a Leaf, in my opinion, because he takes criticism, but he ain't gotten criticism at the level that Jake Gardiner has gone, Nazem Kadri has gone. You could throw so many, Dion Phaneuf, Phil Kessel. I have seen players could not wait to get out of town here because, you know what? Some of them did put an effort. They just couldn't get the job done because the team around them was really bad.
Yeah.
But then you get a Mitch Marner who's kind of, again, saying tone deaf stuff like that. Like, you guys are not gods. You've won nothing. You become gods when you get this team to the level, at least minimum. You know who are gods? Wendell Clark, Doug Gilmour, because they at least got this team within games of being in a Stanley Cup final.
Right.
And those guys are gods. Like, that's the bar is not too high, Mitch. And that's
Right.
the problem. The bar is not high enough for some guys like that.
Win 2 rounds. That's the bar to be considered a god in this. Win 2, and they couldn't. They've been here now for 8 years, and they can't win 2 rounds. They only won 1 round the entire time, let alone win 2 rounds in a single year. They've won 1 round in 8 years. Like that, they're not even close. Not even close to that stratosphere. Like, I understand the sentiment where, you know, this is a Maple Leafs town and, you know, the bar play, you can get into any bar you want. You can get into, you'll get get into any restaurant you want without a reservation because you're a Maple Leaf. Yes, I understand that. And you could do whatever you want. You do have a lot of leeway in this city. You are a special person in the city. I get it. But it's just a tone deaf comment right now to be saying that, just especially him of all people, like Joseph Wall. Hey, that guy, you could call him a god for the way that he played in game 5 and 6. But after the 7-game performance that Marner put out there, no one's calling this guy a god right now. Absolutely not. And everyone's calling for this guy to get traded right now, to leave the city. Like, that's what people think of him. So to call himself a god was, it's quite the comment. Quite the comment. It's like, Mitch, no wonder you barely wanted to speak the short time you were given by the media, by like the PR media liaison for the Leafs. And you still gave the media some gold, I guess, technically, for us to run with here when you tried to not say anything at all. Yeah, that was something else. That was quite the comment from Mitch Marner. Anything else that was said today that you wanted to touch on before we?
Well, I mean, like we were, I think, initially going to talk about Rielly, but I think he kind of just went on the opposite direction of what Tavares saying. Like, if we're close, we wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys today. Like, I think he's the one that still gets it. Like, look, I'm not coming to the defense of Morgan Rielly because I thought he had a terrible series based on what the expectations are for him. But I think when it comes to raw emotion and knowing what to say, like, he is the polar opposite of a Mitch Marner. Morgan Rielly gets it on that level. He's very raw and he knows the right things to say.
Well, I also wonder how much of it has to do with the fact that Morgan Rielly's not getting any older.
No.
Like, Morgan Rielly's gonna be 30.
He's our age, man. Like
he's hitting the dirty 30. Like, things don't get easier for him, and he's quickly realizing that, you know, his chances of winning a cup, his chance of this group winning a cup are not only evaporating, maybe that they've fully evaporated, and he's finally come to the understanding and realization of that. And I think that kind of showed in his mood and on his face when he spoke today, with the tone that he had. It was different than the rest. It was different than the rest. I'll say this. He was kind of devastated in a different way, almost as though, like I said, the realization set in that he's now realizing that this group can't get it done. And although he didn't obviously come out and say it publicly, he did come out and say, like, you know, close, but like, close to what? like he came out and said, we're in a fortunate position where the team's good enough where we should be competing for championships. And, we're not even able to win series here. Like that's effectively what he said. So I did appreciate what Mo had to say. I've always thought Mo should be the guy wearing the C. That's a conversation that we probably could get into at some point.
Oh, we got lots of time for that, Mike.
Lots of time for that type of discourse over the summer of what to do with John Tavares, who, again, didn't say a whole lot. Says he hasn't put much thought into a contract extension, apparently. Which
doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the Leafs have put much thought into a contract extension either,
Nope.
to be quite honest with you. But yeah, so that was kind of the crux of what we heard today from the players at Locker Cleanout. And then to put a cherry on top of, a miserable day in Toronto sports, Boston goes out and wallops Florida 5-1 in game 1. Just because it's dude, like beating Toronto gives teams some sort of like Super Saiyan power and you ride all the way to a cup final. Like we were talking about this, you could date this depending on if you include the Columbus Blue Jackets play-in series as the playoffs, but you could date this all the way back to like 2018-19. The team that eliminates Toronto has gone on to the Stanley Cup final. Like it's wild that it's happened. Like Boston, Montreal, Tampa, Florida, and now you've got Boston up 1-0 in the second round.
That's the only just when the Leafs kind of always say we're right there, we're closer right there. I guarantee it's because they see all the teams that beat them go to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, like we went to Game 7 with a team that went all the way to the Cup final. Yeah. Like we were right
went
there.
To Game 7 with the Cup champions when Tampa beat them. Like,
right?
Yeah, you did, but guess what? Those other teams won hockey games. You didn't.
Yeah,
so you can't say you're that close.
Yeah, like back in 18-19, hey, we took Boston all the way to a Game 7. We were right there, and then Boston took St. Louis all the way to a Game 7. They were right there. Like we could have been there if we would have beat Boston. So like, yes, if you think of things linearly like that, but that's not how reality has been, unfortunately. And it's another first round exit, another big disappointing season for the Maple Leafs, another wasted year of the prime of all of their superstar players. And it's now 10 years of the Shanahan plan. In the next 48 to 72 hours, I guess we'll find out if the Shanahan plan will continue, will transition, or will end, because they are set to speak. Brendan Shanahan, along with Brad Treliving, and new president of MLSC, Keith Pelley, also set to speak on Friday. So we'll bring you those discussions once they happen, and tomorrow maybe we'll get into a lot more about what was said. But again, just because the season is over and the off season has begun for Toronto, we're still here 5 days a week on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Still lots happening in Leafland, as we all know. Never a dull moment, even through the off season and even through the heat of the summer. So we still got 5 shows a week to give you guys all Leafs content all the time. But that will do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms to receive daily Leafs coverage. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.